And we are rolling overview of the Bible, Daniel.
So we're in chapter 9. We left off, Gabriel's coming to bring an answer to Daniel. And so in verse 24, what we see is some of this explanation that Gabriel brings. It says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. And it gives a whole series of things here. But the 70 weeks, basically looked at, a week there is understood in the scriptures as being a period of 7 years. So 70 weeks would be 490 years, and then he's going to divide it into different sections. But here it says, these 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. So those are big things, and how those were fulfilled would take a lot of time to talk about, so we're not going to really go into the details of that at this point. It'd be good for you to look at that and break that down and go into each one of these things. To finish transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity. And you can look at that, and it says, and during these 70 weeks that have been designated for the holy city and your people, these things are going to take place. And so the way he goes on and explains this then in verse 25, so you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be built again in plaza and moat, even in times of distress. So it says from the time of the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Now we covered that back in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. That's when the decrees went forth. Cyrus made a decree to go back and begin to build the temple, so they built the walls, they built the temple. So you go back to that decree of Cyrus, and that seems to be the trigger of the time. He said there would be 7 weeks, so there'd be like 49 years, and then there'd be 62 weeks, so those additional years, and up to a certain point. It says, then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war, desolations are determined. So anyway, what we see is there's these 62 weeks after the 7 weeks, so that's 69 weeks of the 70 take place, and at that time it says the Messiah will be cut off. The people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And that is a key verse there that a lot hinges on regarding who would be the man we call the man of sin, the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness. And it says that the people of the Prince to come will destroy the city. The people of the Prince who is to come. So it's saying people will look at this and what happened, who destroyed the city of Jerusalem. Well, we see in history that it was a Roman, what do you call a group of warriors. I don't know what, a Roman, I can't remember the name of the term, but anyway, one of their legions that came in and destroyed Jerusalem, one of their battalions. But see, and so people say, well, then the prince to come must be a Roman, and that could very well be the case. It looks like it would be here. Rome, the Empire of Rome extended over a long period. It wasn't just in a large distance. It wasn't just Western Europe, but even coming to Eastern Europe and even that area. So it could be he'd come out of that large area. But also we know historically, if you look into Josephus and Tacitus, which were historians near that time, they record that the group that made up that legion or that battalion that came and destroyed Jerusalem were locals. They were natives. They were Aryans, Syrians, and Egyptians. And so we see that the prince possibly could come out of that group, which would be more of a Middle Eastern idea. And so some would lean towards that at this point, and some say, no, it's got to be Rome, it's got to be that. So as we look at all of the scriptures, we need to come together so we can be at least aware of the different possibilities of what's going to happen in the future and make ourselves aware as we see things begin to develop. Anyway, verse 27, that was probably pretty confusing and a little stuttering in between, but anyway. Verse 27 says, he will make a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. For 7 years, so that's That's where we get the idea of a 7-year, you hear a 7-year tribulation in these days we talk about. It comes from Daniel. That's really the only place we get this 7-year idea, is right here. It says, he'll make a firm covenant. Who will make a firm covenant? This prince, this man of lawlessness that we talk about in the New Testament, we call him usually the Antichrist. He'll make a firm covenant with the many. That's usually talking about a large group. Sometimes it means all. But in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice, grain offering, and the wing of abominations will come, one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, is poured out on one who makes desolate. So this is where we get this idea, this introduction of the abomination of desolation, or one who makes desolate. People have related that to Antiochus Epiphanes, who did come in and was involved in the destruction, defiling of the temple. And they said that, he would do this. The thing is he might have been a prototype, but Jesus, after that time, referred once again to the abomination of desolation. So it speaks of a future time which I believe comes right to the end of the age. And so a lot of people there was those 69 weeks that were decreed. They took place starting from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. They went on for a period of time. And then there was 1 week, it seems like it's been lifted and it's taken and put at the end of the age. And that's where most people get the idea of the 7-year tribulation. Now some would say those weeks run consecutively and all that stuff's been taken care of and it's done. Others would say that this 1 week is still to be confirmed. And I would lean more towards that just because of the things that we read in the rest of Daniel and even in here about what's going to happen at the time of the end. And I don't think all of that has happened yet or can be accounted for. So we'll go into chapter 10. So we've been introduced to this idea of the 7-year period, which there will be a covenant made with the holy people, and the holy people here seems to be dealing most specifically with Israel, with the restored Israel. And it says, and in the middle of that, it's broken. And so we get to chapter 10, and we've got another vision. It says, in the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who was named Belteshazzar. And the message was true and one of great conflict, but he understood the message and had an understanding of the vision. And it says here, he gives a setting. In those days, verse 2, I, Daniel, had been mourning for 3 entire weeks. So Daniel had been in a state of, he was in a time of prayer and fasting. Verse 3, it says, I did not eat any tasty food, nor did meat or wine enter my mouth, nor did I use any ointment at all. It might not have smelled real good, until the entire 3 weeks were completed. So it's not a total fast, but he's not eating the things that are pleasant to him. And he's not eating meat, and he's not drinking wine. He's seeking the Lord. He's taking the time to humble himself before the Lord. And apparently it seems to work. As we look in verse 5, it says, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, whose waist was girded with a belt of pure gold of Uphaz. His body also was like beryl. His face had the appearance of lightning. His eyes were like flaming torches. His arms and feet like the gleam of polished bronze, and the sound of the words like the sound of a tumult. So he's this guy that's pretty dynamic looking, appears to him in his time of seeking the Lord. And he says, verse 7, now I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, while the men who were with me did not see the vision. Nevertheless, a great dread fell on them, and they ran away to hide themselves. So Daniel's seeing this thing. The guys that are with him don't see it, but they feel there is something going on here. It's so scary. Daniel's seeing this vision. They don't see anything, but they feel the presence of something very powerful, and they're so scared, they just run away and hide. It's kind of similar to when Paul was on the road to Damascus in the New Testament, and he heard a voice and he fell to the ground, and the guys with him were, it says there was a noise. They didn't know what happened. In chapter 22 of Acts, it says they heard the noise, but they didn't understand what it was saying. But they were scared. This heavenly presence had come down and rested upon him. And so here, these guys were so scared that they didn't see what Daniel saw, but they were scared and they ran and hid themselves. And so it said, Daniel says, so I was left alone and saw this great vision, yet no strength was left in me, for my natural color turned to a deathly pallor, and I retained no strength. So Daniel sees this, and he just is wiped out. I mean, he even looks bad. He looks sick. He looks, there's no strength left in him, and he's lost his color.